Hello, everybody, and welcome to Boy Party. It's a very special bonus episode. It's the After Party. I'm Lucien, and I'm not joined by Shane this week, but I am joined by a veteran of the podcast from our Philadelphia episode. Joining me live from Madrid in Spain, it's Brendan Fernando Kelly Palenque. Hello, Brendan.
Hello, yes. I guess Shane thought he was just too good to join us.
Shane's seen like 5 total films that we'll be discussing today, including Madam Web, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Avengers Endgame, and I honestly think that might be all the ones he's seen, which is kind of an elite selection.
Yeah, that's actually almost impressive. Like, I don't even understand how you can have managed to watch Ant-Man and the Wasp when no one else seems to have.
He just has like his relationship with these movies is based on like what's on the airplane or what does Lucien put on for him. Like now we he saw most of Logan last week here in the house, and he saw most of the Marvels when I was watching that here, but like very limited exposure. And he's all the better for it. But he has no idea what he's missing. We're going to be discussing some absolute bangers today. So we're here, folks, to do a ranking of every Marvel movie that we have both seen. Not just Marvel Studios, which was our initial plan, every adaptation of Marvel Comics by Marvel Studios, by 20th Century Fox, by Sony Pictures, and others that we've both watched. Now, Brendan has watched more than me because he is a psychopath
Crazy.
who has been completely... Tell the listeners what you've been up to.
I mean, yeah, I think for the last few months, I can't even tell you when this began, I guess. Maybe March, maybe April. I've been watching just all of the Marvel films. So I just started with like all the Marvel MCU films, and then I started watching the series, and then I started watching X-Men, and then now I'm almost finished. The only thing I haven't seen is Big Hero 6.
Which no one listening would have thought you needed to see, but apparently you do. Now, you've also been watching the TV shows. Now, you've watched the Disney Plus shows. You don't seem to have any interest in the Netflix shows, but I will tell you that I would consider those to be more Marvel relevant than Big Hero 6, the Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Defenders side of things.
I'm sure they are, and it seems like Marvel is now like reincorporating them, but at the time they were released, I feel it was like Agents of Shield where it's like
Yes.
they reference the movies, but the movies never reference them, and
Yeah.
also they just look so bad, and they're so long, and there's so many episodes, and at a certain point, I do just kind of have to draw a line in the sand.
Yes. Oh, I agree. I agree. The last exposure I had to Agents of Shield was when you and I randomly threw on the final episode after not watching it for several years and had absolutely no idea what was going on. But that show incorporated Ghost Rider and a bunch of those other weird kind of side characters. It took some interesting routes, but no Agents of Shield today. So we have 65 movies and TV shows. There's a couple of TV shows sprinkled in here, only the ones that we've both seen. 65 in order from bottom to top. What we've done is we both made an individual ranking on Letterboxd. I took these individual rankings, assigned a point system, and basically have come up with a joint ranking. Brendan and I resolved some ties over WhatsApp messages, and here we have ranked 65 to 1, the worst to the best Marvel adaptations. So, Brendan, would you like to tell us what is in last place at number 65?
I think you need to send me the correct list. I think you sent me the MCU list.
Oh,
'Cause
no, there's 2 tabs. There's 2 tabs.
Oh, oh,
The other tab is all Marvel.
wait, how do I get to the other tab? Oh, okay.
They're down the bottom.
You're gonna have to cut all this.
That's fine.
Okay, so starting at the very bottom at number 65 is Fantastic Four 2015.
Now, this is the only movie on this list that I can think of that the director publicly disowned on social media before it was even released, which tells you all you need to know about it. This is, of course, the Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan, Fantastic Four. How long does it take? You've seen this more recently than me. How long does it take for them to get their powers? It's like an hour and 30 minutes into the movie, or not, or more?
No, because the movie is like an hour and 30 minutes. It does take like what it seems like 40 minutes to an hour for anything
Right.
to actually happen, which is crazy. I think I'd almost fallen asleep by that point, to be
Yes.
honest.
I remember the poster for this movie has them standing in front of a bunch of like New York skyscrapers, and no scenes in this film take place on the streets of New York. It all happens either in a lab or on a kind of weird outer space kind of terrain that it just looks like goop.
Yes, like some of the ugliest alternate dimension things that I've ever seen in my life. Like no one looks like they're standing in a real place for even 1 second. It's actually almost impressive how bad it becomes in the second part. Like once they get their powers, you'd think, oh, this
Yeah.
will be better now, but it's actually better when they're like children. But also,
Yes.
like the parts when they're children are set when they're like in 2007, but everything looks like it's the 80s or at the very least the
Mm-hmm.
90s. There's nothing about it that would make you think, oh, this is 2007.
Yeah. Oh, this is a complete botch job. It's probably one of the worst films I've ever seen, which is a pity because I like the director, I like the actors, but it was just thrown around like a fucking deflated football from one hand to the other. Terrible film. At number 64, we have Deadpool 2, which, rightfully should be bottom of the list because I absolutely deplore its entire perspective on humanity so deeply. And uh, not to like throw this around as like a cheap shot, but the fact that somebody literally died making this movie just makes how bad it is all the more frustrating. I find it so obnoxious. Yeah, I thought you might like the Deadpools more than me, but obviously not.
Well, yeah, I remember when I originally watched both of them, I thought they were like okay. I liked them. I thought they were funny. But now watching them back, I think, especially Deadpool 2, more so than the first one, they have not aged well.
No.
And I think this one especially just draws in so much references to even like other Marvel stuff that I'm like, this just actually isn't funny anymore. And also, the whole time it's being like, don't take this seriously, but here's this whole story about this kid and generational trauma and blah, blah, blah. And it's
Hmm.
like, I don't care. Why are you trying to pretend I should care when you're actively telling me at the same time I shouldn't care?
Yeah,
Just
I
silly nonsense.
I hate the sort of version of masculinity it depicts. I hate the idea that Deadpool is like they're dipping a toe in this like Deadpool being kind of a sexual deviant thing, which just leads to a lot of what amounts to gay panic humor, in my opinion, of just like him saying kind of flirty things to other men, and it's meant to be the funniest shit ever. And like even the entire marketing campaign for Deadpool and Wolverine is just based on this like idea of like, oh, they love each other. Isn't that hilarious? I mean, I don't know. I just find that whole side of things really frustrating as well. It feels so dated.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can talk a little bit about Deadpool and Wolverine at the end
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
kind of what's to come in the future, but
Yes.
I'm not overly excited.
Sure. At 63, we have Black Widow, which I think is the worst MCU movie. I really, really despise it. I saw it in the cinema during COVID. I just got so depressed watching it because I just was like, this is what we fucking waited through COVID for cinemas to reopen for this kind of shit. Like, the first 10 minutes of it is pretty exciting. David Harbour is the dad with the two girls, and they're escaping on this plane. I actually think the opening scene is very well done. Then there's this insane opening credits with fucking this Nirvana cover that's
Yeah,
just so downbeat. And then it just turns into a movie about like the trafficking of young women and like with these stupid, badly directed action scenes thrown in. And Florence Pugh and Rachel Weisz like really try their best, I think, but it's just dog shit. Like, and I hate the third act. I hate the Ray Winston character and the final action scene. I will never watch it again as long as I live. I really despise that film.
like yeah, I think this film personally, I do rank it above the next film we're going to talk about, but that's
Hmm.
just because at least this film is centered around a character we've seen for so long
Yeah.
that at the very least it's like, okay, I'm invested in this person's story. But even then, it's like, I just can't believe that they were like, when should we set our Black Widow movie? How about between Avengers Civil War and Avengers Endgame or Avengers Infinity War?
Yeah.
That's everyone really wanted to know what she was up to during that small window period of time, and it just feels such like a ridiculous thing to do. Like clearly, I think would have been more interesting to maybe establish the way she became like from a villain to a good guy, right? Or like
Hmm.
maybe just even being a straight up villain the whole story or kind of anti-hero, whatever. That would have, I think, been more interesting if they had to make this film. I
Yeah.
think by the way the character was just dead, it was like, well, there was no need for this when it came out. Really, it didn't need to exist.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that having it delayed a year because of COVID made it feel all the more pointless as well. And really, like, actually has caused Marvel lasting damage that that's the first movie they had out the gate after a year or 2 years off.
Yeah.
Um, At 62, we have your least favorite MCU movie, which I do agree is appalling, and that's Chloe Zhao's Eternals. The director went straight from winning the Oscar for Best Director and Best Picture for Nomadland to releasing Eternals, one of the worst Marvel movies ever. I was hounded on Twitter.com for saying this movie looked bad when the trailer was released. Um, and I hope all those people are eating their words now. This is just absolute meaningless nonsense slop. What do you think of it?
I mean, who in their right mind would ever say, "Oh, you know who needs to be the protagonist of our film? Gemma Chan."
Yeah, exactly. And not only is she an incredibly dull main character, she had already been in the MCU and they decided to use her again.
And like, I personally am not against that necessarily because obviously there's only so many actors, and I don't really care if they're reused.
Hmm.
It does seem to go against whatever internal rules they seem to have, but it's like, okay, they've loosened them up. But no, like, yeah, we're reusing of all the people we could reuse.
Yeah.
Gemma Chan, and also it's like this film has Angelina Jolie, and look, I don't think Angelina Jolie has a pretty good, uh, like cinematography. Like her list of films that she's been in is in general actually not that good, but I do think she is a good
Hmm.
actress, and it does seem like why would you cast someone who's probably very expensive to be in a side supporting role that we're barely getting to see? Or similarly, like Salma Hayek, it's like, why are we killing her off at the very beginning? You know, in some ways, was like glad because I was like, okay, she's out of this. She never has to return for any of these ever again. But I think even Marvel is embarrassed by this film because it's barely been referenced since it's come out, and apparently there's still some kind of celestial body in the ocean of the Earth, and we just never talk about that in these films anymore. Oh, did you cut out?
I'm here again now.
Oh, okay.
So it just decided to pause the recording to save. Okay, so we'll need to keep an eye on that. But it's back recording now. Okay, this thing is acting up a bit. Anyway, yes, when Eternals was being cast and developed, I was fully led to believe that Angelina Jolie was going to be the main hero in it, and thought it was very odd that they would. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to put an actress of her caliber in a supporting role in a Marvel movie in theory, but when your leads are so dull, like Richard Madden and Gemma Chan, you could have gotten a lot more out of her. But yeah, Eternal's very, very silly, and also the Harry Styles showing up in the post-credit scene, totally pointless, won't lead to anything. The most 2021 bullshit ever. At 61, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. I don't have as much like vitriol for this as I do for the other ones we've discussed, but it's just stupid and ugly. Like there's just nothing of value in it at all, and a lot of time wasting nonsense with Bill Murray and fucking what's the guy with the giant head called? I can't even remember.
Oh, right. Modek. Modek?
Modoc. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Modok. Yeah. I mean, what I enjoyed about this film was like the first 10 minutes and last 10 minutes that actually take place like on normal Earth,
Yes.
with Paul Rudd just like going to a cafe and meeting that like guy from the
I think you should leave
I
sketch.
think you should
Yeah.
leave sketch. That I enjoyed a lot. Like the context of like who Ant-Man is now within post Endgame world makes a lot of sense of like making podcasts and book deals. Um, but aside from that, I just everything in the quantum realm, it's like I don't really care. The Wasp has nothing to do. It's actually incredible. I think Evangeline Lilly recently said she's gonna quit acting for a
Yes.
while or
That's what
whatever.
this film would do to you.
Yeah, but it's like, what has she done in these three films? Nothing. She's such a nothing character.
Yeah.
So
It
this
is.
film was more about her mother than it was about her.
Yes. It is funny that they made this big sanctimonious decision to put the Wasp's name in the titles of the movies, just making them longer and clunkier, and proceeded to do absolutely nothing to boost the character's role in the films to justify it. Um, at number 60, we have the first Deadpool, which is all the same problems as the second Deadpool. At number 59, we have Moon Knight, which I thought was the most boring crap I've ever seen in my entire life. I can't believe that Ethan Hawke and Oscar Isaac couldn't make it interesting for me. But all the ancient Egyptian stuff just did nothing for me.
See, that's where I disagree. I think the ancient Egyptian stuff was the stuff I actually liked the most. Um, I just thought it was like kind of nice. I think it had its nice kind of like little cultural moments. I think I can't remember the name of the actress who plays like his wife,
Mm.
love interest in Moon Knight of Oscar Isaac, but I thought it was really, really good. Her character, her motivation, I thought it was a really sweet and like kind of earned moment when like she saves a child and the child's like, "Oh, you're an Egyptian superhero," and she's like, "Yeah," and I was like, actually, that does work. I think a lot of the time this kind of big pandering nonsense, but I'm like, in this case, I don't know, for whatever reason, I was like, this really works for me. Unfortunately, I don't even think we'll see her again, probably.
Probably not. At 58, we have Fantastic Four 2005. I think these movies are fun, just like kind of fun. The second one I prefer. They're not fun enough to be given, 3 stars to, but like they are just mid 2000s superhero slop before you had to take it seriously. Like they have a lot more in common with movies like Sky High and Zoom than they do with anything else on this list. Like pretty bad performances, bad CGI, but like a pleasant 90-minute running time, kind of harmless. I don't know. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Like, I'm not offended in any way by either of these films. The first one, I think, like you said, it's a bit worse. There's a bit too much of like, oh, Jessica Alba has to strip her clothes off so
Yes.
that people can't see her when she's invisible, which just feels a bit like, ugh, but whatever. It was the early 2000s, so
Yeah.
to comes with the territory.
Yep. At 57, Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, this is one where we've had a disagreement. I'm looking here. My ranking awarded Amazing Spider-Man 2 much higher points than Amazing Spider-Man 1, but your ranking has flipped the order because I think 2 is a big improvement on 1 because at least it's not at least it's like you can see the villain when he's fighting Spider-Man in number 2. I think the Electro character is absolutely ridiculous, but I do kind of enjoy his origins stuff. I think it's so stupid, it's fun, and I hate Amazing Spider-Man 1. I think it's so dreary and gray, and this one has a bit more like fun, hanging out with Emma Stone at graduation, and the stuff with Harry Osborn is like kind of goofy and fun, and it's just like more outdoors and more brightly lit. I don't know, like a slight improvement on another terrible film.
I just yeah, I can't get into this film
Mm.
whatsoever. It's so long and there's a billion different subplots and like I'm not particularly interested in either of them. Like him and Emma Stone, it's like yeah, they have good chemistry, but they spend the whole film literally every scene they're in, they're like, we're broken up, we're together, we're broken up, we're together, we're broken up together. And it's like, what is the point in this?
Yeah,
We get it, you know? The Harry Osborn stuff is just like so ridiculously stupid.
sure.
It's like why are these like long lost friends? I don't know. I'm not a big Dane DeHaan fan.
Yeah,
He just grosses me out. And then the fact they give him like all these like oozing green goblin,
yeah, sure.
I don't know,
It
scales.
is
It's
impressive.
just
It's impressive
disgusting.
they managed to find somebody slimier than James Franco to play Harry Osborn. The thing with Amazing Spider-Man 2, this is a movie that was conceived to set up like 4 fucking different spin-offs. Like they were trying to set up
Yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man 3, they were trying to set up Sinister 6, they were trying to set up a Black Cat movie with Felicity Jones. So Oscar nominee Felicity Jones shows up in this movie for about 30 seconds. And then they were trying to set up an Aunt May origin story that they were developing for a while at Sony. Like this was the peak in 2014 of losing the run of themselves over at Sony, trying to replicate the MCU Avengers thing, and thank God they sort of chilled out after this movie did very poorly. They made the deal with Marvel to do Spider-Man, and they went and did their little Venom and Madam Web's side of things, which I think works way better than anything in these Mark Webb movies. So
And you have to remember, like, for as long as complicated as this film is, like, this film contains a whole plot about, like, how his parents were spy, and it actually opens with them, like, on a
yes,
plane dying or whatever, which is just ridiculous and is so irrelevant to anything that even happens in the film. It's
yes,
like, even if we're supposed to care about it, which we shouldn't, it's stupid. This
hmm
film also contains cut scenes, which we've
yeah.
never seen, of Shailene
Oh
Woodley as
yeah,
Mary Jane.
that she got out very lucky, didn't she?
I think so.
Part of me thinks if Shailene Woodley hadn't been cast as Mary Jane in this, she would have ended up as Sue Storm in the Miles Teller Fantastic Four because she gets cast with
Maybe.
Miles Teller in so many things that I feel like that would have ended up happening. At number 56, we have Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Now, I am of the opinion that you would hate this more if you had seen it in a cinema like I did, because it is so fucking long and boring. And the second that once they move on from dealing with how Chadwick Boseman has sadly died, and we have to get into the story, there's no lead, there's no focus for anything. It goes off on these crazy tangents about the new Iron Man suit teenage girl and all this nonsense. I found it absolutely interminable. Now, I saw it in the cinema in Tala, surrounded by young Tala boys who were calling me Hat Boy for wearing a hat in the cinema. So it wasn't exactly a pleasant experience overall, but I thought it was absolutely dire. And I think you being able to watch it in the comfort of your home has maybe given you a bit of a rose tinted view of
Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't say I liked the film. I
it.
think the film
Sure,
just
but I'm
has
looking
so
here and
many.
you gave it a 20. You got a 21 from your list and a 6 from mine. So you liked it a lot more than me.
There's just a lot more in it that I thought was interesting that they could have developed on further, that I was like, okay, if they had taken this more in this direction, I would have liked it. But like I really did actually like the way that they took like Mayan culture and integrated it with these like underwater people. I think the it's just a shame, like there's so much that they didn't explore enough of, and they included too much and they bloated it out. I think especially the last scene with like Lupita where she's like, "This is my son, T'Challa," and you're like, what? It's just utter
Yeah,
nonsense.
yeah.
I think Marvel, look, obviously they were in a very difficult position,
Hmm.
but also they're a very greedy company.
Yeah,
I think the right decision probably would have been to postpone Black Panther 2 and then eventually recast Chadwick Boseman, which it's like, it's not like we've never had to recast an actor for a role because they died before,
yeah.
so
I know it's a shame. It's like the first one just made so much money that they were like, literally, the actor could literally die, and we were still going to make a second one. It was that degree of greed and inevitable sequel dumb. And Ryan Coogler, yeah, obviously tried to make it tasteful in how it handled that, but I think doing it tastefully resulted in a film that is near unwatchable, in my opinion. At 55 is Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Nothing to say about that. I think it's a bit better than the first one. At 54, The Marvels, which, yeah, it's just kind of a mess. But at least it has Ms. Marvel in it, who is a character I've grown very fond of.
and it is like I think the shortest MCU film as well, which is
Yes.
strange because in a lot of ways it never slows down, and you
Yeah.
almost want it to at a certain point because you
Yes.
don't have time to breathe. But maybe it's for the best because at least you're just kind of in and out, and it's like,
Yes.
okay, I'm left with the memories and cats, and that's good enough for me.
Yes. No, if I was forced to sit through the Marvels or Wakanda Forever again, like I know which one I'd be choosing. At 53, Thor Love and
Yeah.
Thunder. Now, I actually scored this one much higher than you. I am famously a Taika Waititi hater. I think Ragnarok is awful, and I don't understand why everyone likes it so much. I thought Love and Thunder was a slight improvement on Ragnarok because it was aiming lower, it was shorter, and it had Natalie Portman in it. And that is, an easy sell for me. It's not good by any means, but there's enough of it that is just Natalie Portman kind of hanging out, dying of cancer, where I was like, I'm not going to hit the fast forward button on this. But you obviously thought it was pretty appalling.
I just think it was such a missed opportunity where it was like, okay, so we're going with Taika Waititi again. We're going with the comedic tone. Why are we including a cancer subplot then into this film? Why are we including a story about this man who's like killing all these gods, who's very depressing? Like obviously Christian Bale, I think gives maybe the best performance in the whole film, but it just doesn't fit with everything else that's going on. So I don't know. I thought it doesn't work as a comedy, and unfortunately they decided to pitch it as a comedy. I think the only thing I really enjoyed from it was like Russell Crowe
Yes.
as a Greek god actually doing like a Greek impression. I thought it was like, oh, that's kind of funny
Yeah.
actually.
I think there's a streak of contrarianism with me where I want to defend that just because all the people who liked Ragnarok that I had to argue with for years suddenly said they didn't like the Taika Waititi Thor stuff anymore when this came out. And I was like, oh, now you feel this way. So I think I'm just defending it out of contrarianism. At 52, Dark Phoenix, not X-Men Dark Phoenix. The movie is called Dark Phoenix. Now, I think Dark Phoenix is far from the worst X Men movie, and this has been dragged way down by your score, as I can see here. Um, you obviously think this is the worst of the X Men, group movies. I think it is harmless shit. Like it's another one of these like got kind of Amazing Spider-Man 2, like obviously loads and loads of script rewrites, reshoots, complete mess. But like every actor in it, bar Sophie Turner, is somebody that I enjoy watching. Of course, the problem is that Sophie Turner is effectively the lead of it, and she's got nothing going on. And it is retreading territory we've already seen in The Last Stand. But it's short and it's just kind of like flimsy nonsense. I don't know. I don't hate it.
Is it short? Is this the film 2 hours long as well?
Dark Phoenix, I think, is like about 1 hour 55 from my memory. I don't know. I rewatched it. I rewatched it 2 weeks ago, and I,
Oh,
I
oh, of
didn't.
course, 1 hour 55.
It
That
didn't
makes a
drag.
huge difference
Yeah, well,
compared
it
to
didn't.
2 hours.
It doesn't drag as much as Logan drags or Days of Future Past, in my opinion. At 51,
I don't
you don't
agree.
agree?
Wait,
Okay,
wait, wait, wait. I have
say
I
your
have
thoughts.
my
Say your
own
thoughts.
opinions about Dark
Okay,
Phoenix. I
okay.
just think this is like one of the most unnecessary X-Men films to exist because it's like you said, we've already seen this storyline in uh X-Men The Last Stand, so I don't really understand why they felt the need to come back to it so soon. Um and there's nothing that happens for most of the film. Jessica Chastain is like very clearly supposed to be some kind of Skrull villain,
Sure.
but they can't say the word Skrull for whatever reason. I don't know, maybe it was a rights thing. So instead, she's just kind of doing nothing for the whole film. It's not really clear what their plan is half the time. And they're just like so uninspiring. And you're also like, well, why the hell would she go off with this alien woman instead of like the people she's been around her entire life? It's just ridiculously stupid. And I'm glad that Jennifer Lawrence was like, you know what, kill me off. I want
Yeah.
to make sure I definitely can't come back for any of these things.
Apparently, though, Jennifer Lawrence only agreed to come back at all because she liked Simon Kinberg, who had sort of Simon Kinberg was the screenwriter and producer of Days of Future Past and Apocalypse, and reportedly had to step in and kind of shadow direct those movies when Bryan Singer would have his little meltdowns. And Jennifer Lawrence liked Simon Kinberg so much that she told the studio, "If you let him direct it, I will come back and I'll be in like a quarter of the movie," when she wasn't planning on coming back at all. So a nice favor for a buddy, I guess, but she shouldn't be in it. At
No, to think
51,
this is
yeah,
what she was doing.
yes, 4 years after her Oscar. At 51, Avengers: Age of Ultron. This is not good. Really, really, just a ton of crap. I don't know. I actually have nothing productive to say about it. I really don't like it, and I hope I never have to watch it again.
I mean, it's just really boring.
Yeah,
The only thing it really does is like establish Wanda and her brother and
yeah.
Vision, and I'm so glad that Aaron Taylor Johnson was killed off because I don't like
I
him,
don't like him
and
at
I
all.
know
Yeah.
he's going to be leading the new Craven the Hunter film,
Yes, I
which I'm
forgot
sure
about
will
that.
be. It's supposed to come out this
It's
year.
out in December, so we'll have to do an updated version of this episode to discuss it.
Yeah, I highly, highly, highly doubt
Yeah.
that that film will be anywhere near as good as Madam Web.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Okay, at 50, Captain Marvel. I just really reacted badly to this at the time. I found it to be kind of super militaristic in parts, and then other parts to be really like cringe 90s throwback shit that didn't appeal to me, and then other parts to be alien, Skrull, Jude Law nonsense. So I know you like it more than me. I thought it was really, really, really bad, but I don't need
I
to.
don't know.
I don't
This is
remember
one of those
anything
films
about
I
it,
have so
so
little opinion on.
yeah. I am at
I think it's
49.
just like really mediocre. Three
Yeah.
stars.
All right. At 49, Captain America: Civil War, which I think is worse than people give it credit for. Like it's quite bad, and I don't think that its reputation is that it's terrible, but it is. Like the inciting incident for Tony and Steve to go to war with each other is really stupid and unnecessarily complicated. All the action in it looks terrible. I hate the airport fight. I think it's so incoherent, badly directed. Nobody gets any opportunity to pop other than Spider-Man in that like one scene that he gets introduced in for 10 minutes, which I do like. But otherwise, I think it's just a mess trying to balance too many plates at once. And yeah, not a fan of it at all.
I just don't think. I mean, it's just like a very contrived film to get Captain America and Iron Man to fight, and then they're not actually interested in following up with the fallout of that in any of the subsequent films. So it's like, well, why do we really go through this? This just feels like Marvel saw that Batman versus Superman was coming out, and they were like, we need to do something.
Exactly. At 48, The Amazing Spider-Man. I just think the Lizard is is maybe the worst villain ever in any of these 65 films. And
No,
it looks like he might be in Venom 3 because there's a shot of Reese Ifans in the trailer. So we'll have to see what happens there. I really hope the Lizard doesn't have a big role in Venom 3. But I know you disagree with me there about him being the worst.
I mean, I don't like the Venom. I don't like. Sorry, I don't like the Lizard. Maybe he'll become Venomified in the film, which would
Maybe.
maybe actually be kind of fun. But
But does the
no, I mean,
Lizard
okay, the villain is definitely the weakest part of the film.
Does
Yeah,
the lizard Venomified not just look like Venom though? I mean, he's kind of the same shape. I feel like big dome, round head. Like
yeah. I
I don't
mean, look,
know.
when he came back for No Way Home, I was not exactly excited. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. 47 is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Um, this movie was like a victim of false advertising. They really sold this was going to have like crazy multiverse, multiple Marvel universes and cameos galore, and then it's like 10 minutes with John Krasinski and Patrick Stewart, and otherwise it's just like a Doctor Strange movie. I feel like you didn't like the girl. Am I right? I thought she was quite charming and saved it, but I feel like you
I
didn't like
thought
her.
she was so irritating.
Yeah, you see, I liked her. That's interesting. She was on my favorite show,
Everything about her, I was
Netflix's
just
The
like,
Babysitter's Club.
who is this? Who, I don't know. I just felt like this character was conceived by someone at Marvel who I hate to say it because it sounds so cynical, but
Yeah,
I do feel like she was just like made to like tick boxes where it's like, oh, she's from a planet where everyone's mother is a lesbian, and
right.
it's just like, what is this? This is just so silly, and I don't think she really fit or like had good chemistry with Benedict Cumberbatch at all. So I was like,
Yeah,
I don't know why he would care that much about her, but
yeah. The one thing it has going for it, well, it has two things going for it. One is that Michael Stuhlbarg shows up and sits at a pew in a church for 5 minutes, and then the second thing is that it turns into a kind of crazy Sam Raimi horror film for like 2 minutes in the middle, where there's all these weird cuts and transitions, and like actually has a bit of interesting editing. But that doesn't last very long, and then it gets boring again. And Charlize Theron shows up at the
yeah,
end, and I wonder if we'll ever see her again.
I think we will.
Hopefully, they probably signed her up for a contract, so she has no say in the matter. At 46, it's the Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton. I genuinely don't have anything to say about that. It is what it is.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great, but it's fine.
At 45 is X Men Origins Wolverine, which I defend. I think it is very enjoyable. It is a very 2009 stupid blockbuster movie. I think it has a lot of silly characters that I enjoy, like Will I Am and the Blob, and like it's bad, but it's bad in a Madam Web way for me, where I'm like, there's like another character I'm going to enjoy watching interact with Hugh Jackman, and Troy Sivan shows up.
I mean, yeah, I just couldn't get into this film. I didn't find it like funny, entertaining. I just kind of found it funny, stupid, and I was like, okay, this is just like nonsense that they made to capitalize on how popular Wolverine was and that the
Yeah.
trilogy was over.
I think
I don't know.
I liked it when I
I,
was 12 or 13, and that's just that feeling has stuck around.
I mean, I've watched it so many times. This is a film I've probably actually watched like 4 or 5 times,
Yeah.
so I don't find it difficult to watch if
Yes.
it's to its credit, maybe. Like, I can just
Yeah.
turn it on. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah. At 44, Ant-Man and the Wasp, I have no thoughts about that. I saw that in a double bill with Hotel Transylvania 3, and I slept through a lot of it. So that's all I have to say about that.
I mean, this film came in between what, like Captain Marvel and Avengers Endgame. It's of basically no consequence. The only thing it really seems to establish is that like what's her name? Michelle Pfeiffer
Yeah.
exists.
Yes.
Otherwise, what did it do? Lawrence Fishburne is in this film. Does anybody remember Lawrence Fishburne? I don't think so.
I think the female villain from this film is going to be in Thunderbolts though. So they're trying to keep her around, even though it's been like 5 years since it came out, 6 years.
Yeah, and not a single person
No,
even knows what the character's
yeah,
name is.
nobody. At 43 is X Men Apocalypse. I think X Men Apocalypse is the film on here that is probably suffers most from just having like too big of a budget. It feels like a movie where they really like said you need to make this even more of a big spectacle than Days of Future Past. So like every scene in it just has so much going on. Everyone's using their powers. There's so much CGI. I think Apocalypse is such a stupid character. Um, but it's kind of got a few ideas. I don't hate it that much, but like it's a mess. I don't know. I won't defend it too much.
I mean, I agree with you. I just think that Apocalypse as a villain, I don't think is particularly interesting. He's like one of these just like very generic comic book big bad villains where it's like, oh, he's so powerful and has every single mutant's powers, and it's like, why would I care about that?
Yeah,
He has no real motivation other than like world domination, which is also boring. It's like what makes the X-Men interesting is like that kind of political discrimination angle, and they don't really get to explore that
they
against
do. They do
Apocalypse.
have that
So
one crazy scene at Auschwitz, though.
oh, yeah, which I mean, I don't know. I both like and hate. I'm like, this is so distasteful, but I guess it theoretically makes sense for the character.
Yeah, I think when you're in the middle of watching 65, 70 Marvel movies, something a bit distasteful is like at least interesting to experience. I don't
Yeah.
know. At number 42 is Avengers: Infinity War, which is just like not a complete film to me. It's like the first act of a movie stretched out to 2.5 hours. I don't think it has like a solid beginning, middle, and end, and I find it very hard to rewatch as a result. It does have Nidge from Irish TV drama classic Love Hate playing a guy who looks like Squidward, which is um, something, but that's about it. So I'd like to
I mean,
move.
it's just,
Yeah.
I don't know, very boring.
Yep. 41 is X-Men The Last Stand. This has a couple of pretty. You and I seem to have both long remembered the scene where Angel like chops off his wings or tries to. Like that's like really stuck with us as like a really like freaky image, which I think is something. Like this movie has a couple of kind of weird, spooky things in it that I think work, but then just a lot of nonsense and similar problems to Apocalypse, where they just have too big of a budget. They're trying to fit too much stuff in and trying to give Halle Berry shit to do because she had just won her Oscar at this point. So they really want Storm to have a big role, but there just isn't that much for her to do.
I mean, yeah, I think that all of these X-Men films have really fumbled the bag when it comes to Storm. None of them have made her do anything interesting. Um, at least I will say, if you compare this to Dark Phoenix, Femke Janssen, is that how you say her name?
Fabricate, yeah,
I think she's great.
sure,
I love her. I think she's like, there's something about the way she emotes her face that I'm like, okay, I buy that this girl has gone absolutely crazy in a way that I could not buy with Sophie Turner.
yeah. Sophie Turner is just is not a good actress in my opinion. At number 40, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I really didn't care for this. I thought it was complete unnecessary animal cruelty porn. Like I found it really stressful and upsetting when it had all the raccoon stuff, rocket raccoon stuff, and then like the other half of the movie I thought was just really boring, generic sci-fi noodle nonsense. I can see here you liked it a lot more than me, so
I mean, I don't. It's not that I really enjoyed it. I think it's very obviously a noticeable decrease compared to the first two films. I think they were kind of left in this weird position where obviously they were always going to have to deal with the fact that Gamora isn't really Gamora anymore.
yeah,
And that's just not as interesting of as a film. I think they did the best that they could considering what they were left with, but I don't I wasn't interested in seeing this particular story continue in this way. So I also just don't care about Rocket that much as a character, so
no.
having a whole film centered around his backstory was like whatever. I thought the villain was good, but
Yeah. Having a whole film centered around his backstory really felt like, oh, we were stuck for ideas here. We had to go digging in our original crop of backstory ideas. At 39 is Shang-Chi. I have no thoughts on this. It's been years since I've seen it. I didn't care for it at the time. I think Aquafina being in it really did a lot of damage for me, where I just don't have a lot of tolerance for her performance style. You've seen it more recently, so you probably have more informed thoughts on it.
I mean it's good. I think it's a good, straightforward kind of film. I think this feels like more like the early MCU days types of film where they're
Sure.
like introducing a character, it's connected to the wider world, but it's not like so connected it's obnoxious or requires a lot of pre-built understanding. It's just like, okay, here's the film, here's the characters, go. Perfect. Great. Is it the
Yes.
most amazing film ever? No. Is the dragon CGI at the end a bit unnecessary? Yes. Did I have fun? Yeah.
Okay, good. At 38 is Ang Lee's Hulk, which is definitely one of the films on here I have the most respect for, even if I don't have any real desire to sit down and watch it. As you and I both noted in our reviews, this film is edited like no other movie has ever been edited before.
It's crazy.
And I think the risks that it takes are super, super interesting. And I kind of wish it had been more of a hit and had been more influential on superhero movies, because I think everything else on here would be more interesting if they were taking ideas from Hulk. But its ideas are good, but it doesn't really hold together. But it has value.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Jennifer Connelly is great in it, I think.
sure. It has
I
a
think
good
she does a
cast.
really good job.
Yeah. At
Yeah.
37 is Thor Ragnarok, which I really am not a fan of. I think it's so annoying. It has like sitcom humor the entire way through and is looks like shit. Just really, really ugly. And I know the Kate Blanchett stuff in it is something that I should find fun, but I really don't. You seem to like it more than me.
I think it just, I don't know, the humor here, it does by and large work for me. I think the special effects and stuff is actually really what kind of gets me a bit down, whereas like I feel like they're just constantly in front of a green screen, which considering we've had like Guardians already at this point, which has all these people in really cool makeup and stuff, I don't understand why that choice was made, but other than that, I do enjoy it.
Okay. At 36 is Loki. Now, I've only seen the first season of Loki. Have you seen both seasons?
I have seen both seasons.
Okay. I have no idea what happens in season two. So give me your 15-second pitch on why Loki is 36 on this list.
I mean, I don't know. I think Loki as a series works pretty well. I think Tom Hiddleston is thankfully a character you actually care about, who has a lot of backstory to begin with. And I don't know. I just think the little adventures he goes on with Owen Wilson, it's fun. For me, it builds on like this time travel stuff, which I do find like interesting in a way that is not overly convoluted or overly stupid. So it works.
Okay. At 35 is WandaVision. Um, WandaVision had its ups and downs for me. I don't know. I didn't dislike it. It went down pretty easy, but like I have no real thoughts on it a couple
It
years
started off
later.
strong, and
Yeah,
every episode it just gets progressively worse as they move away from this kind of TV
sure.
format.
It was interesting at the time because I was watching it obviously week to week, and you were dipping in and out with me. I feel like at the time when we were living together, but I was
Yeah.
watching it week to week, and it was the first Marvel TV show, so it really felt like how big are they willing to go with this? Like how many cameos are we going to get? How much is it going to tie into the movies? Because of the nature of WandaVision, it doesn't really tie into the movies that much, just because like these are characters that have kind of split off from the movies on by design. But it did at the time feel like a bit of an exciting thing to watch it week to week, not knowing where they were going to take it and like how big they were willing to go. And I did enjoy that, but otherwise, it's not something I would ever want to go back and revisit.
Yeah.
34 is Hawkeye,
Hawkeye.
which I quite like. It's pretty fun. Like we're getting into the stuff now where I'm going to say more positives than negatives. I feel like Haley Steinfeld is someone I'm always a fan of. I think her and Miss Marvel and a couple of the other younger characters in a movie together would be very fun. But also Florence Pugh shows up in like the final two episodes, and it suddenly gets way way better, and you realize that like the show wasn't that good to begin with if it needed Florence Pugh to show up to make it work better.
Yeah, I mean, this is another one of those shows that I think is like just very mediocre. It does the job perfectly fine. Like you said, I think Haley Steinfeld's really good. Also, like you said, Florence Pugh definitely makes everything 10 times better. So you're like, oh, I
Mm,
wish she was kind of around from the beginning. But as far as like a send off for characters go, this is like a billion times better than Black Widow.
yeah, exactly. Next up, we have got at 33 the Wolverine. Now, when the Wolverine was released, I went nuts for it. I gave it a 5-star review on my blog in 2013. I don't know what I was at. That was a
Wow.
really insane overreaction. I really don't know why I liked it so much. The entire third act with Viper is so stupid, but up until that point, I do think it has a lot going for it. I really like the score. I think that the music adds a lot to it. It's got this kind of spooky, eerie, um, you know, Japanese thing going on. It's got this Hiroshima or Nagasaki, I don't remember which one, story with how he saved this Japanese soldier. Like, I do think it's a really, really good premise for a Wolverine movie. It just kind of turns into a mess towards the end.
I mean, yeah, I agree. Where like I feel like I had watched this film in my cousin's house at first when I was like 14 or something, and I was like, "Whoa, this is amazing! How have I never heard of this film?" And then I completely forgot about it up until I rewatched it, and I was like, "Oh wait, I have seen this." And then I was like, "This is just kind of fine." I don't know, like there was nothing in it that was like excited me necessarily that much. Like you said, I think it's an interesting premise of like, well, this is a man who can survive anything, so he protects someone from a nuclear weapon.
Yeah,
Okay, but it it doesn't really deliver as much as I'd like on that premise.
yeah. I know that we have Logan ranked one higher here than the Wolverine, and that's due to your score bringing it up. I think Logan is the most fucking smoke up its ass movie I've ever seen. It is such a stupid, generic X Men movie pretending to be this like profound Western about mortality and how old and grizzled Logan is just to make like teenage boys feel like they're like watching real cinema. I think it's really boring and long and thinks it's way more interesting than it is.
I mean, I would argue that I am not like its biggest defender or anything. I know there are a lot of people who are like, "This is the best superhero film ever," and I'm like, "This is nowhere
Yeah,
near close to the best superhero film."
nowhere near
As
it.
you said, I think it's like it's just another X-Men film down to its plot. Like they're just trying to exterminate mutants again. That's all they're doing. Um, I guess I like the stuff with like Patrick Stewart. I think it's kind of fun to like let's have the world's greatest telepath have dementia. How would that affect him? I think
Sure.
that's like an interesting
Yeah.
little subplot to have.
Yeah.
But all the stuff, particularly in like the third act and like Wolverine dying, and then the little girl is reciting some line from some western that they watched like midway through the film. I was like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
It's just
It's it
really
got a fucking
abysmally cringe.
Oscar. It got an Oscar nomination for screenplay. Like, I don't think it's fair. It just frustrates me so much that film gets treated like a real film because people have gotten their standards have gotten so much lower over the years. When like Spider-Man 2 and stuff like that never ever ever would have been acknowledged and taken seriously in that way. So that just pisses me
Yeah.
off. It fooled everybody with its aesthetic. Like, at number 31 is Venom: Let There Be Carnage, which is the lesser of the two Venoms. I think we both agree, but it's pretty good. I would watch it again without complaining.
Yeah, I could watch it again, but I don't know. It's I don't know. There's something about the Woody Harrelson character that I'm not totally on board with, but also it is kind of entertaining in a really stupid way. I just don't
Yeah,
understand why he wants to be friends with Eddie Brock. I don't see why he would want to be friends
yeah.
with him.
Maybe the problem with Venom: Let There Be Carnage is that at this point Tom Hardy has like figured out he's in on the joke, and I feel like the first one it's more fun because he's taking the role completely at face value, and we're watching it with this sort of this is a bit goofy, and then in the second one everyone told him how goofy it was, so they have Venom going to the nightclub and stuff, which is good, and I like it as a concept for a scene, but I think maybe sometimes these things are better when the actors and the filmmakers aren't in on the joke,
Yeah. I hope Michelle
like.
Williams is in the third one because I don't
She's
remember
not.
seeing her in the
She's not in the
trailer.
third one.
She's not.
No,
Oh,
no, she's not. They're introducing Juno Temple as a new like female co-lead because Michelle Williams does not seem to be coming back for it. Although I don't remember Michelle Williams doing anything in the second one.
I don't know. I just think she was fun. Everything
Yeah,
she
yeah,
said, everything that came out of her mouth was like delivered
yeah,
perfectly.
I always love Michelle Williams. She's probably the most overqualified anyone has ever been to be in one of these movies, apart from maybe Jessica Chastain in Dark Phoenix. We're like, why did you do this? Anyway,
Yeah.
At number 30, Spider Man No Way Home. I mean, this is like barely a functional movie. It's really just an excuse to like, it really felt like a kind of like a pull emergency escape button on getting people to go back to the cinemas after COVID. They were like, literally, we just need something that's just absolute fucking fan service nonsense that people will go see 3 or 4 times. And it's very effective. Like, I liked going to see it, not knowing if Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were going to show up, and they showed up, and I found that very satisfying. I thought it was a fun time, but it's not a coherent film, and the fact that there are like little fucking goon teenagers around on TikTok who were saying that it needed to get Oscar nominations and all this shit. Like, it just frustrates me when these people get taken seriously. And then, Variety and Hollywood Reporter will write articles about Spider-Man No Way Home Oscar chances, and I'm like, you people need to learn to differentiate between like something that is silly, fun slop and like filmmaking. I don't know, but it's fun in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the first time I watched this film, I really hated it because I thought it was like just so cynical. On rewatch, it
Yeah,
was like, okay, look, like you said, it is just kind of slop. They bringing together all these characters, I guess, is fun. But like you said, it just there's no logical reason really for any of this to have happened, and it really feels like they're all just working towards one certain endpoint where they were like, okay, and now let's reboot Spider-Man. And well, they've been, I don't know, they're trying to develop the fourth one for a while now, so who knows if we'll actually ever even
yeah,
see that either with Tom Holland at least.
yep,
But
true. A lot of Spider-Man on this list from here on out.
yes.
I think there are seven more to come, probably if not more. At 29, we have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I have like actually no opinion on these two animated movies, so you can say whatever you want. I think that they are not that interesting, but I also have a bit of an anti-animation bias going on with these. So
I mean, I think the first one is better than the second one. I think the second one suffers from the Dune problem where, like, I watched the
yeah,
first Dune and as someone who wasn't familiar with it whatsoever, the film just ends and you're like, okay, but that's not what a story is. Like
yes,
this is clearly the midway point in a story and you've decided to
yes,
drop it off there because otherwise the film would be ridiculously long. I get that, but I
uh-huh.
can't enjoy a film that much if you just leave me without any kind of satisfying conclusion.
Yeah. I think these two movies are just hyperactive in a way that my brain cannot keep up with, and I just find them like stressful and overwhelming. At 28 is the Disney Plus series Ms. Marvel, which I thought was really, really charming. It did lose interest toward the end, but I thought the main actress is really terrific. She like could be a huge star. I actually think she should probably get out of Marvel as fast as possible,
I
because I
agree.
think she'd be huge if she was in like any kind of teen show or teen movies that was not superhero related. Like she's so charismatic. She's really, really great. And I think all the way that this show deals with Islam and how like she's trying to navigate being a young Muslim woman in America is like actually shockingly well handled and sensitively handled. And I found it to be super like refreshing. It's something I hadn't experienced before in American TV. Um, so like it has a lot going for it, but just kind of as with a lot of these that we've praised, they all kind of turn to shit once the action gets switched on. But um, I definitely was a fan of this, and I would commend the people responsible for making it interesting when it could have very well not been interesting.
Yeah, like I think it's fun to have this kind of hero who, especially in like its post Endgame world, where everyone's like celebrating all these superheroes all the time. That it's like, oh well, now there's like a Muslim superhero, so the police are kind of like, I don't know about this. We can't necessarily trust this person, right? So I think it is kind of doing some kind of social commentary there that I think is a little bit more interesting than your typical Marvel fare. Um, and like you said, I really, really hope this actress manages to find something outside of Marvel to continue her career. If she could even be in like a book smart esque movie or
Yeah.
something like that, I think that could be really nice to at least cement her
Yes.
in the public consciousness a little bit more.
At 26 is X-Men Days of Future Past. Now I'm very down on this. This was a huge movie for me. I was so excited. I loved the trailer with the Led Zeppelin song. I was really, really psyched for it. And I thought all the future stuff was so ugly and dumb, and all the past stuff was so boring and slow. I rewatched it a few months ago, and I didn't enjoy it at all. Um, you seem to think it's one of the best X Men movies, which I'm very surprised by.
Yeah, I just think everything about the past stuff in particular really works. I agree the future stuff is a little bit too generic almost. Um, and it's just a bit nonsensical. But at least the past stuff, I'm like, okay, these are like kind of interesting characters. We're building on like that first class James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender stuff, Jennifer Lawrence. I think this is when she was
Yeah,
still kind of tuned in. I think after this is when she just kind of was like,
yeah.
okay, I don't care anymore. Um, and Peter Dinklage, I think, is like a fun little villain as well.
A
It's like
little
messing
villain.
with
That's very
timelines.
rude, Brendan.
Oh, okay, all
He's a
right.
big villain.
I'm just glad that these films are not like Marvel. Like the one thing I really appreciated Fox X-Men was like they never really cared too much about like the timeline or
Yeah.
coherence or anything like that. Like they were very willing to like just kind of hand wave stuff away in terms of we want to make this story, and I appreciated that, especially
Yes,
here.
I agree with that element of it, but I just think it's like complete fitting to like they literally give Rogue is she's not in the original cut of the movie at all. Oscar winner Anna Paquin gets cut out of the film after they've put her on the cover of magazines promoting the film, and then he has to release this Rogue cut on DVD 6 months later where she's added in for like 2 minutes, and it's just evidence of how fucking crowded it is, and like there's actors in this movie that you would never know are in it, like Alan Ritchson is in it, who's now a huge star. There's a guy who died recently who's in it who played like Sunspot or something. Like this movie has just like a couple of really random uh heroes played by people where you're just like I didn't know they were in it. It's so crowded. Anyway, I'm not a fan, but I'm glad you like it. At 25. Now, I have huge issue with the fact this is only a 25. It's Madam Web. Madam Web deserves to be in the top 15 in my opinion. But you've given it a respectable score, whereas I've given it a highly inflated "this movie fucking rules" score. But here we have it at number 25. Um, really, just one of the most enjoyable movies I've seen so far this year. Shane and I went to see it in the cinema, and everyone was having such a good time. The entire last, I think you would have benefited from seeing this in the cinema. The last 20, 30 minutes of this, everybody just could not stop laughing. We had such a good time. It was like the most, pure comedic theatrical experience I've had in years. And when she turns around in her floating wheelchair at the end with the glasses on, everyone in the cinema was in hysterics. It was really, really fun time. So I am very pro Madam Web. I've been recommending it to everybody I know. I love Dakota Johnson. I'm so glad she got tricked into making this terrible movie. Um, and I think it's got like a couple of really fun scenes. It's very breezy, very short, doesn't try anything too crazy, and is kind of the platonic ideal of what a comic book movie in 2024 should be to me, which is disconnected from everything else except in really stupid ways, and just nice and unchallenging.
I think that I'll obviously look. I really enjoyed this film. Like you said, maybe if I'd watched it in a cinema or at the very least with other people who would have like appreciated how stupid it is with me, I probably would have rated it a little bit higher. But I had like a great time. I also don't think it's a film we're necessarily going to revisit though anytime soon. Like I have really no desire to rewatch it. I think this is something I'll rewatch like maximum every few years when it's like, what should we watch? Have you ever seen Madam Web? Oh, it's so funny. You'll love it, and we'll put it on. But it's not something I'm going to rewatch ever by myself, which I think most of these other films I could probably watch again by myself. And that's the main difference there, I think, for me. But I still did really enjoy it. I'm glad that Shoshana from Girls was in it. I'm glad the villain didn't seem to say a single line of his dialogue in the moment and was dubbed over.
Yes, all of that I agree with. I think I will rewatch it again because I'm going to want to show it to people and like laugh along with them, and because it's short as well, that'll be easier to do and more appealing. At number 24 is the first Thor. Now you see, I just don't think this should be ranked higher than Madam Web, but whatever. This has, you know, a couple of fun things in it. Uh, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. No, I like it. You've just named a lot of actors I like, so I give it a lot of credit for that. At 23 is the first Doctor Strange, which I really like. I think the first Doctor Strange has maybe got the best like climactic action of any MCU movie because instead of just the usual throwing shit and fighting, it ends with the Dormammu confrontation and this little like cycle he gets caught in, which I think is really fun and creative. And I just think there's a lot of really fun visual stuff in Doctor Strange, and it doesn't get too messy. There's a pretty coherent group of characters, all played by actors I like. Rachel McAdams actually gets a couple of things to do, which she really doesn't in the second one. And yeah, Tilda Swinton and Mads Mikkelsen, like really good actors, kind of doing their stuff. I don't know. I would find that a pretty easy one to sit down and rewatch. Yeah. 22 is the first Ant-Man. I have nothing to say about it. It's like very, very focused heist movie. It would probably have been better had Edgar Wright been allowed to make his version, but it's fine. It is a fun Paul Rudd summer comedy, basically, with a bit of Marvel stuff in it. I have no issue with it. Um, yeah. 21, Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 was ranked third on my ranking, and you ranked it so low that it dragged it down to number 21. Um, I think Spider-Man 3 is. I think the only Marvel movies better than Spider-Man 3 are our top two that we'll get to. But I know it's obviously the weakest by some distance of the Raimi movies, but I think it's still better than anything else. Just by virtue of having enough of the Raimi stuff in it. Like I obviously am a big Spider-Man 3 defender in general, but I love Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. And it's got what I want, and I like it, even if everything everyone says about it is correct. But you obviously subscribe to the idea that it's not that great. Topher Grace. Hmm. Okay. At number 20 is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I think is really, really solid. All of the like best bits of the Winter Soldier, all the like dudes in baseball caps getting from one place to another, going undetected by Shield, kind of espionage stuff is like all this show is basically. And then it also throws in the Wyatt Russell US agent kind of fake Captain America character who I really like, and your girl Emily Van Camp is in it, and Daniel Bruhl comes back. And even though I don't think that Mackie and Sebastian Stan are like particularly compelling leading men, I do think that it holds together really well. It's very well directed. All the money's on the screen, good action. Like, was a very satisfying bit of action TV during COVID that I really look forward to every week. So I have a lot of fondness for it. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I agree. At 19 is the first X Men 2000. Is this the oldest movie on this list? I think it is. Yeah, yeah. There's nothing on this from the 20th century. Yeah, this is kind of the patient zero for this entire thing, so it deserves a lot of credit for that. Like, if this movie had been terrible, none of these other films would exist. So, Bryan Singer really is one of the most influential filmmakers of all time, unfortunately, for his reputation. I think this film just about works. Like, it's right on the teetering edge of being too silly and too stupid, but it's not. It works. I think, honestly, Bryan Singer putting a lot of his own kind of weird, like, feeling like an outsider, gay experience kind of stuff into the mutants' lives is what makes this interesting. It does feel like quite a personal film for him, and he just casts really well with people like Stewart and McKellen and Hugh Jackman and James Marsden and Famke Janssen, and Anna Paquin is great, and the final action scene at the Statue of Liberty is very good, very coherently directed. Like, I have a lot of time for this. Absolutely. At 18, we have the first Venom, which is really just, yeah, we talked about Venom already, but Tom Hardy having a great time, really fun. Michelle Williams, great. And Riz Ahmed is in it. And yep, I think it's loads of fun. And I remember watching it with you a couple years ago, and you didn't like it that much. And you seem to have enjoyed it a lot more second time around. I I don't think it's really good. I don't think it's as good as Madam Web, but it is good. And it's operating in the same zone, but a little bit less ridiculous. Oh yeah, it does. At 17, we have Captain America: The First Avenger, which is like just an incredibly old-fashioned kind of adventure movie and a very effective one. Like, it's kind of operating in Indiana Jones territory, and I think works fine. I wouldn't be rushing to rewatch it, but it's fine. Oh yes, Star Spangled Man. Yes, Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones. Yeah, yeah, yes. I think the Haley Atwell and Sebastian Stan characters in this movie hit so well, and people enjoyed their chemistry with Chris Evans to such an extent that Marvel has spent the last like 13 years just trying to keep them around and like replicate that dynamic, which says a lot. That I think that this film is exists in people's consciousness a lot more than a lot of these other ones do. At 16 is Guardians Volume 2. Now, I don't remember any of this, and suppose A B C D E F G. Okay. I don't remember anything about Guardians Volume 2 apart from Kurt Russell is Chris Pratt's dad and Sylvester Stallone shows up and there's a group of Ravagers and then Yondu dies at the end. I guess that's a lot of stuff to remember. I remember there being this really annoying Mary Poppins thing with Yondu that everyone just made Mary Poppins jokes for like 2 years about this movie, and I just found it all very cringe and annoying. Um, you like it?
I like it. I think it works pretty well. The dad stuff works. I think the sister stuff between like Gamora and Nebula, I think that really, really works. I mean, Zoe Saldana, I think Zoe Saldana is so good, and it's a shame that she's, even though she's like one of the highest
Hmm.
grossing actors of all time, that she doesn't really ever get to just be a good character in a film where she doesn't have to paint
Well,
her
you are
face.
gonna love Emilia Perez, which she won the joint Best Actress at Cannes, coming soon.
Is that supposed
Yeah,
to be
it's like
good?
a weird trans themed Mexican cartel musical with her and Selena Gomez.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I saw that because I'm such a Selena Gomez hater that I'm very skeptical about that. But
Interesting. I'm not a
okay.
Selena Gomez hater. I think she gets too much hate. And someone who weirdly has never popped up in Marvel, actually. At 15, it's Iron Man 1. This is just absolutely grand and average. We gave this one the exact same ranking. I think this is one of the only ones where our ranking was the exact same. It is just Robert Downey charisma fest, and one that works so well that it launched the entire MCU. Obviously, I think it's very it's dated a little bit in its kind of Iraq War semi satirical thing that it's doing, but it's fine. It's serviceable, and it deserves its place at 15 on this list, in my opinion.
Yeah, you have to give it credit for essentially establishing what would become the Marvel
Yeah,
tone for all these films. Because if you compare it to the Edward
yeah.
Norton Hulk, which is like so tonally different, you're like, okay, they clearly were like, this works. They stuck with it, and for the most part, it proved to be a very successful model for at least the last
Yeah, and
decade.
everyone who involved in making it is now a billionaire because they all have a cut of every other fucking Marvel movie. So it's hilarious. At 14 is Thor: The Dark World, which we are defending here from all of the hate it gets. It is good. It is so underappreciated. I think the action in it is really fun. I think it's got a perfect amount of Tom Hiddleston and Natalie Portman and Anthony Hopkins, and I like all the funeral stuff with the mother and all the
Yeah, Rene Russo
yeah.
is great in this. Like, it's incredible how a character who was basically given nothing to do in the first film isn't even really given that much to do here. It still like actually has weight
Yes.
when she dies. The Valhalla like scene, it works really well. I just think this Thor film works the best because it's the one that is the least silly. It takes Thor seriously and it gives you a reason to care about what's happening on screen. And I wish more Marvel films, and especially Thor films, did
Yes.
that.
At 13, Into the Spider-Verse. We don't need to discuss that. We've already talked about the other one. At
Yeah, it's very
12
good.
is Black Panther. You like this one way more than me. I think it's just okay.
I just think it was a real cultural moment, and I think revisiting it, I was like, this still holds up. I'm still interested in everything that happens here. I don't think it's like the best film ever, but I don't know. I think Chadwick Boseman does a really good job of setting up a character that ultimately I wasn't really in the public consciousness before this. Like, obviously, people knew who Black Panther was, but it was really just like he's the black
Yeah.
superhero in Marvel, and nothing else beyond that. And this, I feel like, really created a world that people wanted to explore, and unfortunately, they have like not
Yeah.
really been able to
Yeah.
capitalize
Michael
on.
B. Jordan is terrific in it. And I think they all
Oh,
regret killing
yes.
him off, especially in a Bozeman world, in a post Bozeman dying world. They really could have done with keeping him around. At number 11
Mm.
is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Slightly overrated movie, I think. Another one where people were like, "Oh my god, the best shit ever! Give it an Oscar!" And I'm like, "Okay, calm down. It's really just kind of like a watered down ripoff of a lot of good 70s conspiracy thrillers, but it does steer away from the superhero nonsense that I find annoying. It is like mostly a pretty good like Washington DC thriller with lots of cool surveillance and espionage stuff. Robert Redford is in it quite a lot, which is always a plus. So I am very happy to sit down and
Yeah, I
rewatch
think
it. Yeah.
this is one of Samuel L. Jackson's probably best
Yes.
performances in the MCU
Yes,
as well.
it
I
is.
think his character's given like a lot to
Yeah.
do, but without it being really annoying. Like Secret Invasion, which I know
I
you
know.
haven't watched, but Jesus Christ, I mean, don't watch it. It's just not even worth it,
Yeah.
really.
I watched 2 episodes of it and I bowed out. At number 10, it's X Men First Class, which I think is really terrific. Such a fun time. Matthew Vaughn should have stuck around and directed loads of X Men movies because he's really good at it. He's really good at balancing the characters and giving everybody little moments. And it has such fun dynamic between James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. And I love all the 60s stuff in it. I think it's got real cool energy and great costume, production design. Like I have lots of time for it.
Yeah, and Kevin
Yeah.
Bacon is like pretty good as the villain, and I think it does a good job of setting up like Magneto's motivations, where it's like even when he's with McAvoy, it's very clear that he's like never totally on board with everything that's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
So
I think this
good
film,
job, and I mean
it
obviously, yeah,
saved the X-Men brand after Origins Wolverine tanking. They were able to
yeah.
keep it around for another 10 years because how good this movie was. At number 9, Spider-Man Homecoming, which is a very, very pleasant watch. I really have nothing bad to say about it. It's got Michael Keaton, it's got Donald Glover, Zendaya's really fun in it when we first meet her character. I think it builds very well on the Tom Holland and Tony Stark stuff that we've seen in Civil War. And I think there's just enough Robert Downey Jr. in it that he doesn't overwhelm the movie. And yeah, I'd be very happy to watch it again. It's as good as a Spider-Man movie made by these particular people is going to ever get, I think.
I think this is definitely a film that's probably better the first time you watch it because definitely at the moment in time, like having all these like little reveals, right? Like that Michael Keaton is the father, which is like such. I mean, it's pretty obvious if you really think about it for more than 3 seconds, but it just never occurred to me that would be the
Yes.
case, right? And then like even like the stupid things like Zendaya being like, "Oh, like I prefer MJ or whatever." Or, I think it was for me. It was like, "Oh, I had no idea that that's who she was supposed to be." I assume like obviously if you've read about the casting beforehand, people probably knew. But for me, that was like a nice little
Yeah.
Easter egg moment where now they just stick in so many Easter egg moments that make you roll your
Yeah.
eyes. That at the moment, I thought that was very, very
Yes.
sweet
It
and well
plays
done.
with people's existing knowledge of the characters in inventive ways, I guess, as well. At number 8 is X2, which is the highest ranked X-Men movie on here. I mean, I would put it high just for Nightcrawler alone. I absolutely love our introduction to Nightcrawler, played by Alan Cumming. I love Brian Cox as General, whatever his name is,
Striker.
Stryker, Colonel Stryker. And I haven't seen it now in quite a few years, so I do need to rewatch it. But my recollection is of it being an incredibly fun time that like builds very well in the first one and has like a bit more action and a few more fun new characters.
Yeah, I think it leans a lot more heavily on that kind of like mutant as different, mutant as gay kind of allegory because you have like the whole scene where Iceman goes back to his house or whatever to meet his parents and he has to like come out to them as a mutant and stuff, which I don't know is played like obviously kind of silly but still given the kind of appropriate tone of like okay, this is a moment for him, this is a real kind of discrimination that these people are facing, and that is very fun. And I think all the Wolverine backstory stuff in this is done way better than it is in
Sure.
Origins. So I almost feel like after watching this, I had forgotten how much Origins basically pulls from it. I'm like, did we really need to retread this a few years later? Not
Yeah.
really.
At number 7 and number 6, we've got Iron Man 2 ranked number 7, Iron Man 3 ranked at number 6. I think these are both so good. I like them
Yeah.
pretty much equally for very different in very different ways. Iron Man 3 is kind of objectively the better film. I think it holds together better and the script is obviously a lot neater, but then Iron Man 2 has got these two terrific villain performances from Sam Rockwell and Mickey Rourke who I enjoy so much. Again, these are two films that are carried by just Robert Downey being so charismatic, having good chemistry with everybody. And yeah, both really, really rewatchable. I've seen them both loads and loads of times and happily rewatch them every couple of years. So big points for me.
Yeah. I think Ben Kingsley is what really puts Iron Man at 3
He's
above Iron
great.
Man 2
Yeah.
for me. It's just what a fantastic idea. And even like when him showing up
Oh,
again in
yeah.
Shang-Chi, I was like, this actually works for me. One of the highlights of
I
that
totally
film as
forgot he's
well.
in that. Yes, he is very funny in that. At number 5, we've got the first Guardians of the Galaxy, which, look, I was so into this movie in 2014. Now, when I rewatch it, I think it just looks really bad. Like, the prison stuff in it looks so brown. And I find that it's just a bit TV. The whole thing has kind of the vibe of like a TV show to me. But I accept that it is for what it was doing in 2014 in terms of introducing these totally new characters with a very weird off-kilter vibe. I think it is a like complete success. So I won't take away anything from it. I think James Gunn is the perfect person to do it. Did a really good job with it, and I know you're a huge fan of it. So it is really good.
Yeah, I think Gunn, maybe along with Coolger in like the first
Yeah.
Black Panther film. I think he was one of the few directors who's actually been able to really make a distinctive film
Uh-huh.
within the Marvel machine. And for me, this first Guardians film, like you said, it just totally works on every level. It introduces you to all these really weird characters that absolutely no one cared about. Like, okay, say what you will about Iron Man and Captain America. It's not like they were people's favorites before the films came out, but at least most people had like a very passing knowledge of who they were. Nobody knew who these characters were, so I think it did have a more
Yeah.
uphill battle. And also, I really enjoy that this film is so disconnected from everything else going on in the rest of the MCU. Like, yes, okay, there's like some Infinity Stone nonsense, but like that just feels like general MacGuffin nonsense in
Yeah.
any film, or at least any superhero film. So it doesn't really distract too much. And the emotional stuff, it still works. I am unfortunately embarrassed to admit that, the end scene where they're like trying to grab the stone so they don't die, it does always like kind of choke me up a little bit.
Very fair. At number four is Joss Whedon's 2012 The Avengers, which I think is one of the most visually unappealing films I've ever seen. It looks like a it looks like an ad for a fucking for a fizzy drink, but is really really entertaining and funny and creates all these little interesting new dynamics between these characters that only somebody who comes from ensemble television writing could have done, and kind of lays out all the dynamics for the next sort of 20 movies. And I think it's really, really strong and holds up on a character level, even if I think, as in terms of the filmmaking, maybe isn't so strong.
I think just like the first Iron Man, you have to kind of give it credit for essentially being the first film to in this kind of genre to really attempt what it's doing of bringing together all of these different characters, different storylines, and like you said, it does do a pretty good job of like cohesively merging them and giving them all their good little character moments, which were pretty satisfying. I think as like an audience member, um, and that like first little roundup of them on the streets of New York with the camera kind of like panning around in a circle, it works. You watch it and you do feel like this is an epic moment that is well deserved. That I don't think they were able to recapture in any of the Avenger films until maybe the last one,
Yeah,
really.
which brings us to our number three, which is Avengers Endgame, which I think is sort of slop in the way we talked about No Way Home, but is a much much better version of that, where it is just delivering moment after moment of absolute fan service that you feel like it has kind of earned. Like it's delivering punchlines to things that have been set up in movies 6, 7, 8 years earlier in a way that I totally buy into. It kind of sheds its superfluous characters for the sake of focusing on Tony, Steve, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and Hulk, and doesn't get distracted with any other.
And weirdly enough, Paul Rudd's Ant
Yes,
Man is also like part of the
which
core team, which I
yeah,
was
I
very
think
happy about.
people they know that people will react well to him being there because he's so universally liked, and they're not wasting time trying to give Spider-Man moments and Black Panther moments because they know that's not going to work in this movie. It needs to be a farewell to Robert Downey and Chris Evans mostly, who are kind of killed off at the end, and that's the end of the two of them. And I think the way that they're killed off is really well done. I think that the whole middle heist section is really good. The battle at the end like looks awful, but it is very very satisfying to see these different characters interact. And I don't know, it's like absolute slop for the piggies that I really really respond well to.
I agree. I'll happily go and back and eat this
Yeah.
slop anytime. It's considering how long of a film it
Yeah.
is, it could have very easily been very boring. This is not like, Justice League,
Yes.
Dawn of Justice, whatever the hell that terrible movie is called. This is a lot easier to sit through. The final fight, okay, yeah, like you said, it does look just genuinely atrocious. Like especially rewatching it, because I remember watching it in theaters and being like, "This looks fine," but rewatching it, I was like, "Wow, this does look genuinely terrible." However, there's so many like high epic,
Yeah.
action moments. Every 3 seconds, you're watching a new character swing in, so
Yes.
it's difficult to be
Yes.
bored.
It is the most I've ever enjoyed watching a movie at a midnight screening on day of release. I went to see it at midnight with a bunch of people I knew, and no one had no idea what it was going to be about. They put very little in the trailers, and I think the way it was marketed and the way they kept the secrets of it was brilliantly done, and it ended up being such a satisfying payoff where I was like, this is a whole movie that I could not have predicted what directions it was going to go in. And it felt like a real experience and a real event in a way that I did. By the time it got to 2019, I didn't think a superhero Marvel movie could make me feel like that, and it did. So it really gets a lot of credit for that. Then at number 2, it's Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man, which is just fantastic. It is one of the greatest pieces of casting to have Maguire as Peter, to have Kirsten Dunst as MJ, to have Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn. It's just terrific, and it is just the right amount of theatrical, kind of silly Green Goblin flying around, cackling stuff, and then also incredibly earnest romance and yearning and youthful kind of coming of age stuff. And I guess everything nice to say about it can also be said of our number 1 movie, which is its sequel, Spider-Man 2, which I think is a very easy number 1 for both of us. One of the best American films, I'd say. Just absolutely perfect.
I think it does a great job of just building off of everything from the original. And then obviously we got Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. I mean, Rosemary Harris, obviously she was in the first one as well, but I feel like here she gets to have so many kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge moments where it's very clear. I think that she does know that Toby is Spider-Man, because otherwise some of the speeches she's making about being a hero seem super out of left wing, but they're just brilliant. Just you connect with her in a way that, unfortunately, I really like Sally Fields. I really like Marisa Tomei. Neither of them, I think, have been able to come anywhere close to giving that character her moment in the spotlight as Rosemary Harris. Maybe because this character should just be an old woman. Like, let Aunt May just be like an old, frail woman who looks like she's going to die at any second.
Yes. And I think the scene of Spider-Man on the train when everybody like lifts him up is beautiful, and it's a very New York. Like it sounds like a cliche, and it is, but it's a very like New York post 9/11, like the strength of community and heroism movie in a way that doesn't feel like jingoistic or stupid American bullshit. Like it actually just feels like Sam Raimi has taken the comic books and tried to find a new modern angle on what it would mean to have a hero like this and how that would be a great symbol for hope and modern America. And I feel like it does that in a way that I find to be very genuinely effective. So that's our ranking, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks to Brendan for joining us. We'll be back soon with more great after-party content, and regular episodes of Boy Party release every Tuesday at boypartypod.com. And Shane will be back on Tuesday with me to discuss Michael Bay's The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.